Look, I am stoked to be here in my favorite city in the world, New York City, to talk about my favorite subject in the world, NFTs, particularly as it relates to brands. You'll learn pretty quickly they're quite the passion of mine. Some quick hits on me. I won't read everything on this slide. I co-authored the first Harvard Business Review article about NFTs. I'm actually writing a book with Penguin Publishing with that same co-author on the subject of how brands can authentically enter the blockchain, whether you're Starbucks or the local coffee shop, how you can kind of have this framework that really works for you. I'm the community lead at Starbucks Odyssey, which is Starbucks' entry into NFTs. I co-founded a media company called Network, and prior to that, I actually spent 15 years in the sort of corporate marketing world, leading multiple disciplines at Fortune 500 and multinationals. So I was actually leading internal comms at Progressive when we sent everyone home for COVID, which was both rewarding as well as kind of challenging. So because I have this weird combination of being this corporate communications professional who's buttoned up and an NFT degen who poses as that monkey on the internet, I often get asked by brands and other sort of agencies to talk about NFTs and what they are. And anybody who talked about it, I mean, Joel and Travis nailed it. They play the hits. They say, Steve, aren't NFTs bad for the environment? Or Steve, aren't NFTs just a big scam? Or my favorite, which they hit on, which someone actually said to me, which is, Steve, I think NFTs are just a passing fad. I think they're like Beanie Babies, to which I almost exploded into dust, but instead I kind of met them where they are and explained, look, NFTs are just better software. It's better technology. It gives the opportunity to have aligned brand incentives with your consumers, create new lines of businesses, and enhance your old ones. But this guy was being particularly a little bit of a hardo, and I kind of wanted to say to him, don't be that guy. Because there are people who thought the internet was a passing fad because of cost and tech barriers, which sounds pretty familiar to where we're at in NFTs. Also, I had to put the video game one on here because I feel very attacked by both these articles. Video games and the internet are like my two favorite things in the world. I'm actually like wearing video game socks right now. So now initially when I was gonna do this presentation, I actually had this idea of trying to talk about a juxtaposition, a tale of two brands, one that was doing well and one that wasn't. But I didn't want to do that because that's not authentically who I am or who I want to be. Because anybody using the blockchain they're taking the journey. They're being the pioneers. They're getting in the boat. They're sailing across the ocean. They're trying to find land. So what I end up telling these brands is that big brands aren't coming to the blockchain. They're already here. Whether it's a consumer brand like Starbucks or Disney, an athletic brand like Nike or Adidas, a social brand like Reddit, or even a luxury brand like Tiffany. If you are not thinking about your blockchain strategy, then you are already behind. So instead of the sort of crazy sort of juxtaposition of a brand doing well and a brand doing bad, I decided to go with 4 questions you should ask yourself, looking at the positive brands that are doing well. And I'm gonna start off being a total friggin' homer and go with Starbucks Odyssey. Because the first question you should ask yourself is, what's the brand purpose of what you're doing in NFTs? Are they there for a reason that fits with your company? Starbucks is a good example because, you know, they have this 30 million plus person brand loyalty program already. They're world class at it. They're practically, I was talking to MK who's in the audience the other day, she's like, Starbucks is a bank because they've got so much money in there. And so to them, doing an experiential loyalty program, which I won't talk to you, I'll talk your ear off if you find me in the hallway about it, but I won't go over the details today, but an experiential brand loyalty program makes sense. It's sort of like Pokemon Go for an over-caffeinated NFT nerd like myself, but it works for the masses and it fits into their brand strategy of having brand loyalty and logically using the blockchain, which dovetails into number 2, which is, does the blockchain actually solve one of your problems, right? So many people do NFTs for NFT's sake. DraftKings is an interesting example, and if you don't sports, like I sports, what you'll learn is that DraftKings has something called daily fantasy, where you sort of draft a team that day. You don't have to have them the whole season, but most fantasy sports, you draft a team at the beginning of the season and have it the whole season. So they have this really unique combination of what they're doing with the blockchain because they wanted to have digital ownership, more security, instant transferability, more transparency. So they created DraftKings Rainmakers. It solves a problem where instead of building 5, 6 systems built on top of each other, the blockchain is a singular system that ends up giving them this DraftKings Rainmakers where they get cards, you get a slot machine sort of mechanic, it opens up the pack, and then you have the choice to play Patrick Mahomes on Sunday Night Football or sell that card. And the blockchain actually solves a problem. We see this with Nike with .swoosh as well very well, where token-gated drops, things like that, which works with their existing business model and actually solves a problem. Do you have the right partners? This one, especially right now, is so mission critical. Tiffany & Co. is a great example of this because they sold $250,000 NFTs. Now, who would buy $50,000 NFTs that give you a physical pendant, which is worth not nearly that, as well as a digital pendant of the same thing? Well, the answer is CryptoPunks. People who fancy themselves sort of early investors, tech startup luminaries, people who are early into NFTs. And by the way, to get a CryptoPunk, you're going to pay at least $100,000, but anybody in NFT knows you got to pay at least $200,000 to get one that's not a crappy floor one. So for that reason, if somebody has made the decision not to sell a $200,000 NFT, probably can afford $50,000 for a chain. Partnering smart meant they sold out, and not only that, didn't compromise their brand identity. If they had sold to anybody, sure, they might have sold out, but someone probably would have put a $5 NFT on there just for the lols, right? And that's not good for their branding. So they kept that brand identity. Adidas is another really cool example of this. Actually saw someone this morning in one of the Adidas Into the Metaverse tracksuits. She was rocking it out to get coffee. And I'll tell you, the way that they partnered was really, really smart. They came into the NFT space. They partnered with Yuga Labs, which is like Bored Ape Yacht Club. That's my hoodie. It's sort of the most successful NFT company in the space. G-Money, who is a Web3 native fashion designer, owns one of those CryptoPunks. And Pixel Vault, which has Punks Comics. Now, they have like the best devs in the game, which will come into play in a second. But number one, they curated a community because they were able to say by partnering smart that everybody was ready to buy their stuff. But number two, they had a contract issue when they launched. Now, for a lot of brands, it means pause the mint, we'll do it tomorrow, we'll pick it up, but not them, because when you have Pixel Vault's devs on call, you can fix that thing in 2 hours and get it back up. So partnering smart, mission critical. Fourth question, how are you going to market? Reddit's an interesting example of this, because Reddit launched NFTs to people who didn't even know they had NFTs. Now, they go down the whole gamut of the four questions, like it solves a problem by giving them verifiable blockchain identity, it fits into their general business model because they sold PFPs. They went to market this way with a custodial wallet that people didn't even know they were buying NFTs. They sold millions and millions, like 5 million NFTs in the first couple of months because they had a go-to-market strategy that made sense for them. Now, that's not to say one size fits all. On this non-exact chart, which is going to absolutely drive real data people nuts, but the idea is just for demonstrative purposes, you can see that there's sort of the cost and who your buyer is. So I mentioned Reddit, right? Reddit just sold to people who weren't blockchain native at a very low cost. Tiffany, on the other end, $50,000, you could basically go get a Tesla for that. They sold to people on the high end who are NFT native, and sort of everything in between. Starbucks, what we're doing is sort of a mix, which has been really interesting. And then DraftKings, sort of both with a mix of different expenses. But the purpose of this is to realize that when you go to market, it's not one size fits all. So look, I know I talk at a little bit of an auctioneer's pace. That's just not just coffee, that's just who I am. So if you have one takeaway from this presentation, don't compare NFTs to Beanie Babies, for the love of God. It is just god-awful. But really, have a brand purpose. Use NFTs to solve a real problem. Partner smart. Have a clear strategy. And actually, I take that back. If you take one thing for this presentation, do me a solid. The book we're writing is actually about, again, how brands can authentically enter NFTs. So if you go to bookaboutNFTs.com, it will get you onto our mailing list. You can go there and sign up. We're probably going to do some giveaways, some fun things like that. But the idea is to be able to take this book and hand it to people, because for me, if I have the opportunity to bring the world that much closer to using this technology to make lives fundamentally better for consumers and for businesses and create those aligned incentives, that's all I want to do. Thank you.